Hello, Waterford Wesleyan Church. Welcome to Online Church Easter Edition. Before we begin, I have a couple quick announcements. First of all, if you are not following us on Facebook or Instagram or subscribe to us on YouTube, make sure you do that. The way the algorithms work is that the more people who are subscribed or following us, we're able to have a broader reach in reaching people for Jesus. So make sure you do that. Secondly, I want to talk about our text to pray line that is open right now. And what that is if you text the word pray to 223-8662, Pastor Paul and I are allowed to receive those texts or those praises or prayer requests, and we're able to pray with you. In a time such as now, where it can be very easy to feel isolated and alone, we want to make sure that you know that we are praying for you and still in community together. Thirdly, I want to talk about our tithes and offerings that we have set up online. If you go to our website at waterfordwc.com and you go to the drop-down menu, it's the last option. It says tithes and offerings. If you don't have an account set up already, make sure that you just set up an account, and you can have reoccurring tithes and offerings or just a one-time per week. But that is an awesome way to be able to continue to faithfully give as God has commanded us to do. So without further ado, here's Pastor Paul. Happy Easter.
I have grown to truly appreciate traditions. There's something about them that bring a grounding, a familiarity to them that just adds that warmth to life. Maybe for you, your tradition is around Christmas time. There's a certain dessert that you bake, or maybe a movie that you've got to watch at Christmas every year, or maybe at Easter time it's the outfit that you buy. And go shopping with your mother, your sister, whatever it may be, and you find that perfect outfit. Maybe that's your tradition, or sometimes it's a summer vacation that you do and you go every year, and there's something about going there that brings that familiarity. Or maybe even it's a family reunion. Whatever it may be, those traditions tend to hold us stable. Now for me, one of my traditions actually is tied to hot dogs. And yes, I did say hot dogs. It sounds a little bizarre, but just stay with me. When I was young, and I mean young, really young, going as far back as I can remember, one of the traditions that's developed in my family is my dad and I would go to a place called Jimmy's Hot Dogs. And Jimmy's Hot Dogs is located in northwestern New Jersey, right on the Delaware River. And this was just a place we would go all the time, and it was what we did. And in many ways, this hot dog stand is no different than the ones that you have visited in your life, or maybe you visited them reluctantly, because I have discovered that hot dogs can be a polarizing thing. Some people really hate them, and people like me, well, I like them a little bit more. But anyway, let me get back to topic. Whether you love them or hate them, Jimmy's is the best hot dog on the planet. Anyway, for you see, what made Jimmy's so wonderful is not only do they give you this hot dog on a steamed bun with your hot dog, and you order it with ketchup and mustard and onions, and then the final piece is a quarter pickle on the hot dog, almost as big as it. They wrap it up in wax paper, stick it in a bag for you, and out the door you go, and you have the world's best hot dog. But that's not all that makes Jimmy's wonderful. It's the tradition of it. It's the memories of it. It's what has been a part of my life for a very long time. In addition to that, it's been around longer than I have. I believe this is true, that my parents even went there in high school. So you get the idea that this has been carrying on for quite a long time. And this isn't limited to just my family. This is for anybody that grew up in that region, is familiar with this, and has been a part of it, and has taken their children and their children's children to Jimmy's Hot Dogs. So as time moved on, and I moved and moved again and grew up and began to raise a family and moved again, the last thing on my mind was Jimmy's Hot Dogs. Nor many times in my life I didn't even live close to it. And then I had a moment when I was in my mid-20s raising a family. I had a moment and I said, wait a minute, I can carry this tradition on with my children. So I quickly grabbed my 3 boys at the time. We jumped in the car. We drove the 50 minutes to northwestern New Jersey to go to Jimmy's and keep that tradition going. And I couldn't wait. I was so excited. And as I'm driving, I'm having my own memories of my dad and I going as a kid, and I can't wait to share that with them. And I'm not so sure they were as excited as I were. I mean, they're wondering if they can get cream soda and Doritos. I don't even remember, but they just weren't quite as thrilled as I was. So as we're getting closer and we're crossing the Delaware River, the bridge to cross into New Jersey to get right where Jimmy's is, we're about 100 yards from it. My anticipation is rising, and I can't wait to share this tradition with my boys. And I pull into the parking lot, and the parking lot was empty. And I thought, well, that's strange. I've never seen that before. And I looked, and the building's empty, closed, gone, nobody there. And I was heartbroken. I didn't quite know what to do. I was disappointed and heartbroken, and well, maybe because I was hungry, but mostly because that tradition ended. I went to where Jimmy's, well, I thought it was, and it was gone. So I reluctantly took the kids to McDonald's. They didn't seem to care. Happy Meal or Jimmy's Hot Dogs was equal to them, but I still felt quite disappointed. A few days went by, and I was telling this to my mother on the phone. I was talking to her on the phone and saying, we went, and it wasn't there. It was just so disappointing. And she said, well, didn't you know that Jimmy's moved from New Jersey over to a shopping center in Pennsylvania? And after she said that, I think her voice turned into Charlie Brown teacher, because I stopped listening. All I heard was wah, 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 wah. And I'm like, okay, great, Mom. I hung up the phone, and I think she said something else, and off I went. I grabbed the kids, and off we went back to Jimmy's Hot Dogs again, this time to the real place, and it would actually be there. Now, looking back on that time, I realized one very obvious but key truth to this whole experience. I was looking in the wrong place for what I thought had value. I was looking for what was important to me in the wrong spots. And so, of course, I didn't find it. And I've also come to realize that I've looked in the wrong place for what is important before, in other situations, in other important situations. For you see, this isn't limited to just my Jimmy story. Many times we have, maybe as people, have gone looking in the wrong place for what really matters in this life. And in looking in the wrong place happens in far more serious situations that can have a significant impact on our life. You see, when we look for meaning, significance, and life in places that don't have it, we will always come up short, wanting, and disappointed. And this is the very issue that the angels addressed the women who showed up at Jesus' tomb on the morning of his resurrection. The women went to the tomb expecting to find Jesus' lifeless body, but that's not at all what they found. And I want to share with you the account of the resurrection of Jesus in Luke chapter 24, beginning at verse 1. The scriptures say this, and I want you to pay careful attention to what the angels say. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Remember what he told you while he was still with you in Galilee? The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. You see, the women headed to the tomb to bring some degree of comfort in their mourning by bringing spices. Now, not to sound a little harsh here, but those spices were brought to place on and around Jesus' body to combat the aroma of decay. So they went there fully expecting to find Jesus' lifeless body. But much to their surprise, the body's not there. Now for us, we understand why. We get it, 2,000 years of history. We know the account, but the women that watched Jesus die just a few days before, it wasn't clicking with them yet. And for them, it's only logical to go to the tomb. What else would you do? But as we will see, they went to the wrong place. The angel's declaration to the women brings some powerful clarity to what happened in all of their lives. Listen again. This is Luke chapter 24, verse 5. It says this, "In their fright, The women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" That's a great question. And you see, this is the key issue. The women were looking for life in a place that does not contain it. They were in a cemetery. They were looking for the author of life in a place he's not going to be. Did they fully understand that? No, probably not. This is all they knew. Someone dies, you go to the tomb. That's what you do. They hadn't put it all together yet. But I know this. The angel's words, they still ring true today. Looking in the wrong place and coming up empty. You see, I know this all too well, far more than just a hot dog stand. For I spent many years of my life, and a good portion of my life, trying to find value, trying to find meaning, trying to find purpose and worth in this life. And in places that did not contain any life. I was trying to find life, meaning, and significance, and the essence of life in places that were dead. And maybe you do too. Sometimes we try to find life, meaning, and significance in things that don't contain it, like things. That the more stuff we own, the more value, the more significance, and the more importance our life will have. And we know we just come up empty. Or maybe we try to find life and meaning in where we've been or where we go, whether it's a vacation or whatever it may be, but we also will eventually come to understand this. Life experiences don't offer us real life. They're a nice part, but they're not life. Or maybe we seek out meaning and significance and life in what we do for a living. That it's our title that we really hang our hats on, and this is how we know who we are. But you'll find that that doesn't bring life either. And for many of us, your career or your title or your job, it might currently be gone. And if your title is taken away from you, then who are you? You see, they come and go too. They don't possess life either. Maybe sometimes it's something maybe a little more noble, that we try to find meaning or value in life in another person. And as wonderful as a deep, meaningful relationship can be, and as good as it can be, it still does not offer life. For you see, that person is dying too. They only possess a limited degree of life. Where Jesus, he is the author, perfecter, and giver of life. Or maybe yours is you're just chasing weekends. You just get to the weekend to have another experience, to get to Monday to recover, and to just wait for the next weekend to do it all over again. And you found that that's not giving you life either. Matter of fact, it's deteriorating your life and only causing more and more regrets. Or maybe yours is you find a spiritual angle. You look for life and significance in nature. You say, well, I don't really need Jesus or anything like that. I'll just go out into the woods and then I'm with God. But I want to remind you that the woods, the forests, the rivers, those are God's creation. They're not God himself. And scientists will tell you just the same, that our world is dying. Our sun is dying. So if we're looking for life and meaning and significance in things that are dying, we're going to end up just like the women, looking for the living among the dead. Or maybe for you, what may be increasingly growing in our culture too, and throughout history, is a look for meaning and significance in yourself. We call that humanism. It sounds something like this: I don't need anyone. I got it all figured out. I can do all this on my own. But if we just slow down and are really honest with ourselves, when life gets hard, dark, painful, we know we're insufficient to handle all that life throws our way. And this is why we end up looking other places for life. Too often we're our own stumbling block. We're our own hang-ups. We have our own defenses, our own preconceived ideas of who God is or who Jesus is, why we won't turn to him, who is the author of life. And when we refuse to look to Jesus and we'll look everywhere but him, when we do that, we're just like the women at the tomb, we find ourselves looking for the living among the dead. You see, the words that the angel spoke 2,000 years ago still ring true today. Why are you looking for life in a cemetery? Just like my journey to Jimmy's Hot Dogs, when I showed up there, I was in the wrong place, and what I found was an empty building. When we look for meaning in life anywhere other than Jesus, we'll find ourselves equally as empty as that hot dog stand. So why do we look for life in a dying physical world? I don't know. But I want to share this good news with you. I want to share this truth with you. And this is the essence of the resurrection, why this matters so much. Because Jesus is the only true life giver. Listen to what he says in John chapter 11, verse 25. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he physically dies. So obviously he's talking about a much more significant thing than just a physical life. You see, Jesus is the one that gives life to things that are dead, and his resurrection is proof to that. Why can he? Well, because he says he is the resurrection and the life. And he doesn't shy away from that. Elsewhere in John chapter 14, verse 6, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. You see, with the resurrection, Jesus proves his authority and his power over death. He is the author of life. And when we look anywhere else, we will always come up empty. Choose to seek and follow Jesus, and he will give you meaning, value, purpose, and life. This is the meaning of the resurrection, that real life is found in the one that has defeated death, and that is namely Jesus Christ. Choose today to put your trust and your hope in him. No longer look to things that are dead to offer you what your soul is crying for. Trust in Jesus today.
What an awesome message of hope. As we leave this Easter season, I just pray that you go and you continue to put your hope in Jesus Christ. And if this is the first time you've ever heard this message and you've done that for the first time, awesome. I pray that you contact us so that we can be praying for you and answer any questions that you may have. So as we go, I pray that you just continue to put your hope in Christ. Happy Easter, everybody.